Zoom, and please come up with your questions in the chat window. So let's start the session. In this session, we'll upscale you from an intermediate level to an expert level. Manu will walk you through the concepts of GitLab and Docker in a bird's view. Hey Manu, it's over to you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, John. So, guys, to be a full stack automation engineer or to be a full stack engineer, every automation tester should have knowledge not only in automating an application, but also on how to automate the deployment process, right? Just imagine you are a very good automation tester, but you follow manual process in deploying the code changes. Isn't that sounds weird? What will happen if we follow manual process in deployment? It means there is a high chance to human error and other time consuming process. True? Now let's first analyze different stages of a deployment process. Deployment process involves continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployments. So in short, CICD. So the question is, what is CI? Continuous integration is the practice of merging all the code that is being produced by developers. The merging usually takes place several times a day in a shared repository. Now, what is CD? Continuous delivery adds that the software can be released by automatically pushing changes to a staging system. Continuous deployment goes further and pushes changes to production automatically. So in today's session, we'll be considering a real-time scenario on how to use GitLab CI/CD along with Docker to set up a testing pipeline. Wait a minute. Before going into GitLab CI/CD and Docker, let's spend a minute on what a pipeline is all about. A pipeline is a group of jobs or tasks that gets executed in batches. All the jobs or tasks in batches run sequentially or parallelly based on the runner's availability. If all jobs succeeds, then the pipeline moves to the next stage. If it fails, it will not get executed. You could see all the stages that's been there. All right, now let's move and discuss a little about Docker. Docker is an open source project that allows you to use predefined images or Docker images to run an application in an independent container. A Docker image is a read-only template that contains a set of instructions for creating a container that can run on the Docker platform. Now, when this image is used with GitLab CI/CD or Docker runs each job in a separate and isolated container. This makes it easier to have a simple and reproducible build environment that can also run on your workstation. The added benefit is that you can test all the commands rather than having to test them on a dedicated CI server. Hence, setting up an automated testing pipeline with Docker image and GitLab makes a QA engineer's life easier. Now, Shan will guide you on how to set up a simple testing pipeline using Docker and GitLab. Over to you, Shan.
Good morning, everyone. So just a moment. Can you pass on to the next slide, please? Yeah. So a warm good morning to everyone. And without further ado, we can get started on our practical workshop. So I know, like, as we have seen, like most of you are a little bit new, and some of you are already familiar with our previous workshops. But I would try to slow down as much as possible so that everyone can keep up with your self hands-on on your machines. So let's see what is in for today. So due to the time constraints, we had to cut short a bit so that I can slow down and everybody can keep up. So today what we are trying to do is like create a project on a GitLab and see how we can use the GitLab's repository feature. And we have a sample project for you so that you can check out and start working on it. Then we can see how we can use a Docker feature to deploy some dummy application. So in this case, we are just going to deploy some static HTML files, which will serve as a dummy application. Then we can see how we can use the Docker Compose feature, that is like a kind of a orchestration tool for Docker, to deploy multiple services. In our case, we will be deploying our dummy application and the Selenium grid with the help of Docker Compose. I hope that is clear. So let me share my screen. Please let me know in the chat window if you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. And for those who are not able to set up the prerequisites for this session, please don't get disappointed because I hope everybody is in the same WhatsApp group. We will help you afterwards the session also, whenever you to resolve your issues, or once you get resolved, to help you get through the project. Cool. So first thing you need to do is log into the gitlab.com. I hope everybody has at least set up your GitLab account. So first thing to do is sign in to your GitLab account. So are you on this screen where you can see the projects? You might not be seeing any projects. It might be empty for you. But can you at least, are you on the dashboard screen? Please let me know your response in the chat box. Okay, cool. So first thing what we are trying to do is like how to create a repository from a already given URL. So if somebody is passing you a Git URL, doesn't matter it's from whatever repository, it may be a Bitbucket, okay, or any Git-based repositories. But if you have a Git URL, how we can easily import it to GitLab? There is no tedious way of downloading the code from the other repository, creating a repository in the GitLab. So no tedious. We have a straightforward approach of importing it. So let's see how we can share it. So what I'm going to do is, don't worry, this is not for you. So I'm just showing you how we can share it. So I'm going to share this repository called CI sample for you. So I go to the project, and there is a clone option, which might be familiar for everyone. So I click on clone, and I copy the HTTPS address for you. So I'm pasting the URL in the chat box for everyone. And this is a public URL. Now this is our reference. Now what we are going to do as a team is to import that project as our first step. So we are not only going to create a new project, but we are going to import a repository as part of the project. So if you look onto the around the top right corner of the screen, you can see a plus icon. Is everybody able to find it? So guys, it would be really helpful for me to let me know, like, if we are on the pace, if you can respond and let it be interactive. So once you see the my questions, or if you are on the same step, please comment on the chat box. Thank you. So click on the new icon and click on new project. Can you see the screen? Okay. Now click on the import project. Okay. and click on the repo by URL. Is everybody able to see this modal of asking the Git repository URL? Okay, cool. Now copy paste the URL which I've pasted in the chat window here. Now, since this is a public repository, you don't need a username and password. But if somebody in your organization is sending you a closed account or a private account in which you have been given access, you have to use the corresponding username and password. Now you have a mirror repository option if you want to keep in sync with your old URL. So if I'm giving you the URL and if you're checking the mirror repository option, any changes in the old repository will be reflected here. Anyway, so we are not using it right now. Now let's give it a name. So let's give it a unique name. So let's say Docker tutorial. And we can give any description. And below you have a very important option of visibility, whether you want to keep it private or you want to make it public. So since this is a tutorial and we are not, it really don't make sense to share with anyone, you can make it private. But again, the decision is up to you. So once this is done, please click on create project. Please let me in the, okay. So can you see the screen? And for those who might have missed the step, I can show it again in a quickly. So you go to new project. Go to the projects option, your projects, to go back to the earlier screen. Click on new project, import project, repo by URL. And the first field is your repository URL or the project URL. And the username is optional for the public repositories. Mirror repository is for sync. Project name should be unique. And this project URL you can customize. So by default, the project URL will be same as your GitLab URL plus your project name. You can change it. And your visibility level. Now, once it is done, you can go back to your projects and you can see all your created projects. Now, can everybody see the projects you have created? Any responses? Okay, cool. Now yep. So you should be seeing only one project, whichever you have created. So the home screen actually shows your repository, but if you are going into any other tabs by mistake, you can always go back to details or your repository files. Clear? Now the next step is to clone your repository, right? It is same as for any Git-based repositories. Now, if you have already created IntelliJ or JetBrains products, you should be seeing all your options here. So you can directly click on that. But I'm not sure like how many of you have done that. So I'm trying to show you a generic approach. So click the easiest way is click on clone and use the HTTPS. You can always use the SSH key, but yeah, it's includes a little more additional process of setting up the private public key pair. So we are skipping it for today. So copy the HTTPS URL. Now the next step is opening your IntelliJ. So let me know if you are seeing this already open page or you are seeing a welcome window. Are you seeing the screen if you are already opened any project? Okay, so I think most of the people are seeing welcome window. So I'm going to close this project. And I believe you should be on this window, right? Oh, okay, great. Now, to open a project from version control, you can click the get from version control. And here you paste the URL which you have copied from the GitLab repository. The directory will be pre-populated with the project name. Now, if you want to change, yes, you are welcome to change it. Okay, is everybody on the same page? Okay. Now click on clone. Now, if it is for the first time, you would be asked for username and password. Have you got the prompt? Can I see any response here? Are you seeing a password prompt, or are you already cloned the project? Okay, I cannot see any response here, but it would be really great. Okay, so I can see that somebody replying password prompt. So if you're getting a password prompt, please enter your GitLab credentials and press OK. Let me know if everybody is able to see the screen or it's got cloned. Because this is a really important part. So because we cannot move on further without this step. So I would request everyone to please put it in the chat box about your status of your clone. Okay, I could see one response, and I assume everybody is done with it. So now this is a time for a pat on your back, because this is the first step, but it's again a very important step. So congratulations each one of you, because you have already learned the first step of creating a new project plus importing a project from a public URL. So let's get going. So before getting started, let's see what our project holds for you, or the project which we have created for you to the hands-on. So as you can see, the first thing you may notice is your pom.xml. So can anybody tell me what does that indicate about the nature of the project? Anyone? Okay, I can see a response. It's a Maven project, right? Cool. Now let's see what is inside the SRC. We have a main folder and we have a test folder. So everybody can assume like what can be in the test folder. It will be some of our test cases, right? So it is a Selenium based test case, which we have created for you. So it's nothing major. It's just a single class file, okay, which you can run it. Okay, it's not any POM based framework or anything. This is just to see how we can make use of the Docker. That's it. Now I can just walk you through the test case, what it will do. So most of the people who have been in the previous session might remember with the URL here and the remote WebDriver, this test case is based on a Selenium grid. and it is expecting the Selenium grid to be available in the address localhost :4444. And it is navigating to an application called http://web/user.html. And it is entering some form fields. That's it. Nothing complicated. Please let me know if you need a reiteration of the overview of this task file. Or if everybody is fine, we can go on to the next step. Can I move on? Oh, okay. Now, let's see what is in the main. Now, in the main file, you have your dummy application, which is nothing but some static HTML files. So if you go into example, you can see a lot of HTML files. If you open one of them, yeah, you can see like this. And as you might be knowing, you just if you open in the Chrome, so to open it in any browser, you can see in the top right the available browsers. So click on any one of them which is installed for you. So I'm clicking on Chrome for me. So are you seeing a ugly looking HTML file? Can you open? Please drop your responses in the chat window. Anyone? Oh. Okay, cool. Thank you for your response. So let's get back to IntelliJ. So can anybody say like why it is looking ugly? I mean, like we don't have any images, no colors, no alignment. Any guesses? Okay. So that is basically because we don't have any associated styling sheets, that is called a CSS, or the images associated to the HTML. Now we have that stored, however, in the another folder called assets. We have CSS and images and JavaScript, but it is not really loaded because it's again static. Okay. When you see the image is supposed to be in this particular format, which is not. Now we will solve this issue. We are going to solve this issue with the help of a Docker when we host this application. So what do you mean by hosting it? So if you go back to your Chrome, you can see the address basically like where you have hosted your application. So you will see like, okay, it's Selenium sample src main. So it's again just the hosted on your IntelliJ when you're opening it. Otherwise, if you can directly open from the folder, you will be seeing like your local path, like C:/ your project URL. But it's not really accessible to the outer world or your network. So let's resolve that issue. Now, how we can resolve the issue? Is anybody aware of something called as a web server? Please let me in your chat box. So if you are not aware, it's not a problem. I can explain it to you. So it's called web server. Okay. Okay, I can see some responses no as well. So yeah, so for the mixed audience, a web server is an application which can help you to serve your web applications. Okay. So it again depends on your technology. So if you have developed anything on your Java, or you have different web servers. If you have .NET or any Microsoft technologies, you have different web servers. So we have something called as Nginx. So if you can just Google Nginx, Nginx. So Nginx is one of a very good web server. It's an open source HTTP server, which can help you to host even static files. Also, any what is a Python based application basically. So that's what Nginx is used for. Now you don't have to install Nginx. Okay, what we are going to do is make use of Docker to deploy our application, our HTML application using Nginx. Okay. So is everybody ready for the Docker? Oh, cool. So get back to your IntelliJ. And the first step is right click on your project root. Click on new and file. And the file name should be Dockerfile. Now this is the default naming convention. Now the thing is, like, if you change any or create a file in any other name, you have to explicitly mention the name. But if you are using the default file name for the Docker or Docker Compose, you don't have to specify it. So we are going with the defaults. Once you click on the OK button, you should be seeing this prompt. It is so for any new files, your IntelliJ will be asking you whether you want to add it to your Git repository or not. So you can say add. Okay. Now for any Docker image, it's like how you are installing a operating system and softwares on your machine. Okay. So for installing any machine, any applications, you really need a base image, right? Now on top of that only, you can build your application, copy your files or anything. So what we are going to do is, like, we are going to find a base image which is useful for us to create a Nginx Docker and host our application. Okay. So can everyone go to the Chrome and just Google Docker Hub, or the site is hub.docker.com. Can everybody see this screen? Okay. Now this is like a Maven repository for you. So you have the repository for all the URLs, right? So what we are going to do is, like, you have a very good search engine here. So you can just search for Nginx. So the first thing you should be seeing is like an official build. Now, if you have a Docker account, you can always update your images, whatever you are making, and publish it in Docker Hub so that anybody else can access. So did everybody found the Nginx official build? Okay, I'm going to, okay, thanks. Now, if you click on that, you can see the first thing, that is your image name, which we are going to use in our Dockerfile. Okay, so this is very important, the name of the image. Now, for every image, you have multiple variations. So those variations are marked by using tags. So if you scroll down a bit, you can see supported tags and respective Dockerfile links. So you can find like a lot of tags here. So it can be depending on the Nginx version, depending on the base operating system they have used, okay, and many more. Okay. Now for our exercise, what we are going to do is like, we are going to use a tag called Alpine. So can you find a tag called Alpine here? So tags, we can say like it's a different releases. It's not really versions as such. It's different flavors. For example, you can say like MS Office for Windows, MS Office for Mac. So it can be of the same version, different versions, or different operating systems. Okay. Now, is there anyone who is hearing the word Alpine for the first time? Or is everybody aware of what is Alpine? Okay. So Alpine is a flavor of a Linux. Okay. So it's basically an operating system. But the advantage of Alpine is like the file size is extremely small. Now it's like around 30x smaller than your normal Ubuntu or Debian images. So basically, an Alpine image will be like around 3 to 4 megabytes. Okay, and it's an operating system. So the advantage of using Alpine in your Docker files is like it will be easier to download. Now imagine if you are using a Windows image and it's like 8 gigs. Now imagine downloading the Docker file in your operating system using a Windows. You have to wait for 1 day to get the 8 GB downloader, right? So that's why we are going to use Alpine, so it's pretty quick. Are we good here? Or any further questions here?
Ishan, maybe we can do a health check here and we can see is everybody able to come up with our pace or not, or we have any doubts or queries or clarifications.
Thanks, John.
Team,
That's a really nice suggestion.
Yeah.
So team, please let me know in the chat window if anybody is stuck or everybody is in the same page. So after completion of each and every page or file, we are going to do a health check so that we make sure like as much as possible, everybody are on the same pace. So please feel free to drop your responses whether you are at the same page or not. Okay, it looks good. So we are on the good pace. And fortunately, nobody is stuck at the moment. So let's get back. Now, before going to deploy your application, make sure you type localhost or just localhost. And make sure you are getting this screen. So if you're, this is mainly to check if your port 80 is free or not. Is everybody getting the same screen? Okay, great. Now let's go to our Docker file. Now this Docker file can be as easy as like 2 or 3 lines of code, or it can be complex with a few hundred lines. It depends on what type of application you are going to build. Now, for our session, we are going to make a very, very simple Docker file, or I would say a bare minimal Docker file. Okay. So the first line of every Docker file begins with specifying the base image. And it's pretty easy. That is from space your image name. So our image name we have already seen in the Docker Hub, that is Nginx, right? And separated by a full colon, we mention the tag. So you have to mention only one tag. So it will be Alpine. Okay. That's it. So if you're going to run this Dockerfile, you will be having an empty Nginx Alpine image running. Now the next step is like, yeah, we have a blank image. So what? It's of no use, right? We need our application to be copied there. Now imagine this Docker container is a very isolated engine. It doesn't have anything unless you specifically do it. So what we are going to do is we are copy these two folder contents, that is our HTML contents and the static files, to the Docker. So that's again a straightforward. So what are we going to do is copy the source directory. So it will be src/main/ first we are going to copy the HTML files and the destination directory. Okay. This requires a little bit knowledge of Nginx where it is serving the static contents. So the directory is /user//nginx/html. Don't worry if you are not able to get it. I'm going to copy paste the file contents in the chat window. So don't worry about it. So the next line is copying the static contents, that is our CSS and the image file. So it will be source/main and assets and the same directory. Okay. So I'm going to copy paste it for you. So for those who are not able to type it. Oops. So can you copy paste in the Docker file? Are we good here? Because we are not going to type any more contents into the Docker file. So this is going to be our base image with our application on it. Okay, great. Now there is always a a traditional way of running the Docker file, that is like just Docker run, but we are going to skip it because that is not the usual way we are going to use the Docker files in our day-to-day use. We are going to use something called as a Docker compose, which will help you specify the manual commands in a file and deploy it in a one click. Okay. Are we good? Okay. So let's see. So I know everybody is excited to see the application hosted in the Docker. So let's get started with Docker Compose. So Docker Compose, the starting is almost same as how you create a Docker file, but instead of a Docker file name, we are going to give the name as Docker Compose. So that is DOCKER-compose, and it's a YML format or a YAML format. Again, add it. Okay. Now Docker Compose, you can relate to some maybe your test.ng file where you are actually specifying what are the tests you have to run, right? And which class files to use, and many more parameters which are required for your test to run, right? But in this case, instead of test, we have something called as services. Now your application is a service, and as you have seen, your Selenium grid is another service, right? Okay, so let's get started. And like the Docker Compose, we have a starting for a Docker Compose as well. And in this case, it is the version. So which version of Docker Compose you want to use? It's not Docker, it's the Docker Compose. So you can Google for the latest versions, whichever you want to use, but make sure like not all the versions are backward compatible. So assuming everybody got the latest version of Docker, I'm going to use the version as 3, which I believe will be supported for most of you. Okay. That's it. Now, the basic tag for writing down a Docker compose is called services. Okay. Now, services is a YAML list. So that means like you can have multiple services defined under the service. Sorry, it's a dictionary. So you can have multiple services defined under services. Now, what are we going to do first? We have already created a Dockerfile, right, for our application. Now we are going to make use of this Dockerfile to host our application. So let's give our service a name. So I'm going to give the name as web. Okay. You can give any name you want, but I think it would be easier for everybody to follow if you can just give the name web. Okay. And the next thing is build. So this is only applicable if you are going to use a Docker file of your own. So if you have a Docker file created, you can type build, and with a space, you can put a dot, just a full stop. Now, what dot means, like it looks at the same directory and it will try to find the file with the name Dockerfile and it will build it. Okay. Good. Now, what next thing we need is like, once this is done, actually it will bring your application up, but still you won't be able to see it. The reason is like, as I mentioned earlier, Docker runs in an isolated environment and it is really disconnected from your host unless you specifically open any ports to it. So what are we going to do next is connect our local host port to the Docker host port. So it is pretty straightforward. The tag is ports. And make sure everything is aligned, because YAML really is concerned about the indentation. So if your spaces or tabs are not accurate or under the same indentation, it will show you a syntax errors. So make sure it's like this. Now for Nginx, as I mentioned earlier, and we have verified in our machines, it runs on port 80. So what we are going to do is we are going to connect our source port to our destination port. Okay, so this is your local address and this is your Docker address. Okay, now I'm going to copy this for you. Let me know once this is done. Do you have the files ready with the following contents in it? Okay. Now, next is going to be challenging. The reason is like, this is going to test whether your installation, your admin privileges, and everything is good. Because we are going to run the Docker in your machine for the first time. Now, since my machine is already run, you can find it faster in my machine, but don't worry, it will if it is slow for you, because it is going to download the images for you. Okay. Now the command is pretty straightforward. It's docker -compose. Okay, up, that means bring the service up. And you have the additional parameters. So the first parameter is build, because we are going to build for the first time, and -d, so that once this is done, it will detach from the console. Okay, so that our console is free and it won't block you. Now for you, I'm going to copy paste the command. So is everybody ready to run the first Docker Compose file? No one is excited? Oh, okay. So press enter. Let's see. And keep your fingers crossed. Are you seeing something progress for saying like pulling images from Nginx? I'm very curious to know your responses. So please, okay, I can see one yes. So that's a good sign. Please let me know in the chat box once you can see something called as a creating your project name underscore your service name and with a green sign saying done. So I'm waiting for you guys in the chat window. So please let me know if for anybody it is done. Come on, guys. You can be more interactive. I'm looking forward for it. Let's make it exciting. Okay, I can see one response. Okay, so let's go to our Chrome window. And do you still have your localhost port open here? Okay, refresh it. Do you see welcome to Nginx? Okay, I can start seeing some yes. So, and let's go one more step ahead and see if we can see our application. So if you can go to your IntelliJ and image and under examples, you can see a number of HTML files, right? You can note of any HTML files and type it here with a colon slash, say, HTML, I believe. Can you see your application? Okay, you can see yes. So guys, this really needs a applause for everybody who got it running. So was it exciting how the Docker worked out for you? Okay, cool. So let's take so everybody have done this so far, and I believe everybody needs a small break. And for those who are not able to get it running, I'm here to help you out. So please let me know in the chat box if anybody is stuck. For everybody else, let's make a 5-minute break, and we can reconvene at like 10 past 11. So you can grab a water and freshen up. Okay, guys, so see you in 5 minutes.
And meantime, if you have any doubts, please come into the chat window.
Team, do you have any questions or anything that can be answered right now?
Okay, guys. So I hope everybody is back. So welcome back to the session, and let's continue. Now, you have already known like how we have already hosted our application. Now, the next thing is like we are going to set up a Selenium grid. So let's check out if our Selenium grid port is empty or not. Okay. So for that, your port, you can always find it in your IntelliJ. I've coded there. If you go to your test, Java, and your Docker tutorial, you can find it here, which is the port or the address we are looking for Selenium grid. So can you try to use this address and put it in the Chrome and see if something is running or not? Please let me know in the chat window if you are seeing the same page. Can I get some responses, please, in the chat window? Okay, cool. So let's get into our second stage of creating Selenium grid. Now, I hope everybody is familiar with the basics of Selenium grid. But just in a brief, I'm just going to tell you like it has two components. One is a hub and one is a node. Okay, those are the basic two components of a Selenium grid, uh, which is required to function. Okay, now Selenium hub acts as a central node, central server in which all the tests will connect, and the hub will connect to the individual nodes. So the individual nodes are the ones which is having your browsers and web drivers installed. Okay. So now for building the Selenium grid, we are not going to make our Docker files. Okay, because you don't need to copy anything to Selenium grid. So where do we find the Selenium grid images? So yes, you can always go to the Docker hub, but for Selenium alone, we have a official site for Selenium HQ, or you have a GitHub repository for the Docker images for Selenium. So if you can just type Selenium grid Docker image, or I can send you the URL. So can I've dropped in the chat window. So can everybody go to this page? So please let me know if you can reach this page. Okay. So if you scroll down a bit, you have a README file. And you have your Docker commands to get it running, but we are not going to use Docker. We are going to use Docker Compose. So scroll a little bit down. And that's it. One second. I'm not sure if they have updated the README. Just give me a look. Okay, I think some they have updated their link to find out, but no worries. So you can find there's an image they are using for Selenium Hub. So this is the image what we are going to use. Okay. No tags necessary, so it will basically pull out the most stable version. So let's go back to IntelliJ and start building our Selenium Hub. So go to the same indentation, use your first service, that is web, and type the name for your Selenium Hub service. So let's say put it a name like Selenium/_hub. Now we are not going to build anything here. Instead, we are going to use an image. So instead of build, type image, and we are going to set up the Selenium Hub first. So let's say Selenium/hub. Okay. Now similarly for like port 80, here we have to expose the port 4444. So again, ports 4444 and link it to the Docker port also 4444. Okay. Are we good here? Nothing new here. Instead of build, we have specified an image. That's it. Okay. Okay. Now what we are going to create is like a dependency here. So we are making sure unless the web is successful, we don't need a Selenium Hub. Okay. So that means like if the web fails, we need the Selenium Hub also to be stopped. So that's again. Okay, let's try it. So the tag is depends on, and we mention the service which you want to depend on this service. So here we can just mention web. Okay. Again, for the ease of you, I'm going to copy paste the whole code again for you. You can cross verify, or if it's everything good for you, you can continue. So can we continue with the deployment of Selenium Hub also? Can I get some responses, please? Okay. So before bringing up the new image, we really need to bring down the old thing which is already running. Now to see if anything is running, like your task manager to see what are the processes are running for your machine, you have something called as a Docker PS. So that is Docker PS to see if any Docker containers are running for you or not. So I hope everybody can see this one line which says which is the port open and what is the name. So let's bring it down. So the command is again straightforward. It's same as Docker compose, and instead of up, you say down. Okay, I'm pasting the command again for you. Now, if you try the Docker PS again, you won't be seeing anything. So you have killed your containers. Now let's try to build our new image. So again, go back to the old command. I hope you will be having it in your history. So that is docker-compose up, again build it, and -d. Are we good to go? Okay. So here again, you will be seeing the images getting pulled. Please let me know in the chat window if you can see it as done. So you should be seeing 2 done this time. One for the web and one for the hub. Can I see some responses, please? Are you at this stage?
Hey Sean, can we plan for a health check now, and we can see is everybody able to follow with our pace?
Yep, sure. So guys, again, it's just a health check for the Docker Compose. Please let me know if everybody has reached this stage. If you're facing any difficulties, please let me know in the chat window. Okay, so let's get it rolling. So let's go back to the Chrome. And before checking if the new application or the Selenium grid is up, first let's see if our old application which was running is still running or not. So refresh the page of your application and see if it is still there. Is it still there? Okay, I assume it is. Now, let's go to the URL which you have specified for the Selenium grid and which was showing that this site can't be reached. Refresh the page. And you will see a XML. So you can just go back to the just localhost :4444. And you should see the home page for the Selenium grid. Can everybody see this page? Any responses? Okay, great. Now there is an option called or a link at the second line that is called console. Can you click on the console, please? Okay. Now, are you seeing the same page as I'm seeing? That is a view config link and everything else is empty. Okay. Now, can anybody in the audience say why it is empty? Any guesses? Why this console page is empty? Okay. So the console page is where you can see all the connected Selenium grid nodes. Now we have already only set up the hub. So that hub is just a connecting points. It cannot work on its own. It needs the working browser and the Selenium web drivers, right? Okay. So let's go to the IntelliJ and set up a Chrome node for us. Okay. Now, you have, if you, unfortunately, the site is not really showing the images. But yeah, let's see if it is there in the Node Chrome folder. If you go back to the Selenium hub page. Okay, yeah. So you can see the image file here that is saying selenium/node-chrome. Okay. So this is the image which we are going to use as part of the setup of the Selenium node for our hub. So go to the IntelliJ again. And set up another service. So I'm going to name it Chrome node. And it's same. We are going to mention the image. And in this image, what we are going to specify is the image name which we have seen earlier, that is Selenium/node-chrome. Now you have two options here. Either you can choose the node Chrome, and you have another option called -debug. Now the debug option is good if you want to see the UI of your Selenium nodes. That means like if you run a Selenium test, it will be running in a headless since the Docker doesn't have a UI as its own. So what we are going to use is the Selenium debug node, which exposes a remote desktop or a VNC port. So that's why in the group I mentioned like to install the VNC viewer so that you can see your test running in action. Okay. So for here, you don't have to expose the port of the node, but we have to expose the port of the VNC so that we can do a remote desktop. And the VNC, for your information, runs on the port 5900. Okay. Now, again, we need a dependency here. So can anybody guess what is the dependency for the Chrome node? Anyone? Exactly. So we need the dependency on the Selenium hub. So we say depends on and Selenium hub. Now we have to specify to the Chrome node to which specific Selenium hub you have to run. So that means like we have to specify the IP address and the port of the Selenium hub. Now how we do it with use of the predefined environment variables. Okay. Now environment variables are specific to like a global variables, which is available to across all the applications. Okay, I hope most of you might have already using it. So we specify it as environment, and it's again a list. So we specify hub underscore port. It's a pretty confusing, but yeah, please stay with me. So it starts with hub underscore port underscore 4444. TCP ADDR. So this stands for the IP address. Now you can specify an IP address if you already know which is the IP address you are going to assign. But the recommended or the easiest way is to just specify the service name. So here I'm going to just copy paste the service name of the Selenium hub. Okay. Now the same goes with the port. So the environment name is, instead of ADDR, you have port. And you can see which is the port you have exposed. That is 4444. Are we good here? Don't worry if you are not able to write the code with me. I'm going to copy paste, don't worry. But are you good with the concepts here? So the new thing what we have done here is the environment. So if you want any variables to be exposed in your applications in your Docker, you need to use environment. Okay, that's a new thing. Okay. Now comes a little bit complicated term, that is network. So we have seen like we have 3 services, but we never checked if all the services are able to connect with each other, right? If we are exposing the port to the outside world, we can access the service directly, but it doesn't mean the services can connect with each other. So what we are going to do is create a virtual network for the network services or the Docker services. And don't worry, it's not as complicated as in a real world network. Okay, it's mainly specifying a few lines of code. That's it. So, and similar to services, network can also be defined in a YAML. So go to the same indentation as your services and type networks. Okay. And similar to your service name, you specify a network name, anything. And under the name, only one argument is required. That is what kind of network you want to build. Now, what we are going to build is something called as a bridge network, which connects all the services internally. Okay. For that, we say driver and bridge. Any doubts? Please let me in the chat, know in the chat window if you are confused or you got the point.
Shan, meantime, maybe you can copy the code in the chat window. Maybe everybody can run it.
Not yet ready. So we have a
Okay.
few more lines to type.
Okay, sure.
Okay, fine. So we have already defined a network. Now you can define multiple networks. So if you want to connect only these 2 services, you can create another network for, say, let's say we say Selenium network. Okay, and each service can connect to multiple networks as well. Now let's connect each service to this network. So for that, it's almost same. So we say networks in each service, and we are going to say which network to use. Now we can pass the arguments here if you need to specify any of the here. So we have a driver bridge. So if you want to override anything, you can pass it. Otherwise, you can just pass a empty open and close curly braces. This is how you connect your service to a network. So let's copy paste the same code in every service so that every service are connected to the main network. And again, the order is not really necessary, but it is always recommended to mention the image name first. Okay, now I'm copy pasting the code for you. Now it's the time for a health check. So let me know if everybody are on the same page. Have you got your Selenium hub running already? Have you, do you have the file in front of me in the same way? That means like you have copy pasted the code from the chat window. Or if you are stuck somewhere, please feel free to let me know that as well. Can I get some responses, please? Anyone? Can I move on? Okay. So what are we going to do next? We want to run added one more service and networks, and we want to bring it up, right? So first thing to do is, again, repeat the same process, bring the existing services down. So that is, sorry, I'm going to do it down. This is the safest way. And build it up again. That is docker-compose up -- build at -d. So you can see this time in your logs, if anybody is noticing it, you can see the first line as creating the network. Okay. Fine. So let's give it a moment for everybody's image to get downloaded for the Chrome node. So let me see, let me know in the chat window if you can see the 3 dones. Please let me know in the chat window, please. So we can go forward.
Guys, if you want to share screenshots, please use the WhatsApp group also. I guess most of you are there, right?
Did anybody got it done? Okay, fine. So I can see some responses. So let's go back to the Chrome and go back to the grid console. I hope nobody has closed it, and refresh it. Can you see the Chrome node connected? Or are you seeing any error pages instead? Or are you still seeing the empty page? Now this is again another checkpoint for us because this is going to conclude our Docker Compose session. So please let me know if anybody is stuck or you have got it successfully. Okay, great. Thank you for everybody who is interacting. Really appreciate it. So you got it. So now let's see if our VNC viewer is really running before we do a trial run. So can everybody open their VNC viewer? I'm not sure like you have installed the Windows version or the Chrome add-in. So you have different variants of the VNC Connect. But more or less, you will be getting a similar window. Right? So please let me know if you have launched the VNC Connect or the viewer. I'm going to assume it as a yes. So once you have this window, please type the address, that is localhost colon the VNC port which we have defined in the Docker Compose, that is 5900. Now, if you are prompted for the password is secret in small case. So is everybody able to see this window? Please let me know in the chat window. So this is more or less like a remote desktop you are used to do to a Windows machine, but instead we are doing a remote desktop in a Linux machine or using a VNC server. Anyone? I'm still waiting for the response. So can we move ahead then? Okay, so I assume everybody got it running. So the next step is basically to go take our Selenium grid for a spin. So that means we just see if our test is running on it. So for that, so as you know, like the Selenium scripts are pretty fast, so you may need to switch back to the VNC viewer as soon as you run your script. So there are multiple ways to run your script, but the easiest way is to run it as a Maven project. So you can either run it as a Maven project by right-clicking your POM and build it, or you can just type Maven clean test. Okay, so it doesn't matter, whichever ways which is familiar for you, you can run. You can even right-click and run it as a test ng. Doesn't matter. Okay, so are we good? We are going to enter the final phase of our session, that is testing our code.
Hey, Shan, before moving to the next stage, can you please just do a quick recap on things that we did for the last 20 minutes? Just a quick recap.
Yep, that's a good suggestion. So let's see. So let's see what we have done so far or for today. Everybody have created a project in the GitLab, and we imported the project which we have shared. We used the GitLab repository and we cloned it in our local machine. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have missed anything. We have went through the project structure and explained what it contains for the tutorial. We have seen how to create a basic Docker file and how to copy the HTML files or the required source files to a Nginx image. And finally, we have used the Docker Compose to bring together all the required services and to host the application and the Selenium grid and the hub and host it. So that's what we have done so far. Okay, so let's go back and before concluding our session, so let's try to run the test and see if it is running or not. So I hope everybody got the command here. And here you go. Let's quickly switch back to the VNC viewer. So you can see the Chrome has launched, and that was pretty fast. But I hope you have seen the Chrome has launched and we have actually executed our test. Let's go to the IntelliJ and see if the script also says the same. Yes, it says the build success. That means our test has been run on the Selenium grid using our application, and it has got succeeded. I hope everybody got so far till here. Okay, I would really appreciate a response here. Okay, I'm not sure like if everybody got it or if it is if everybody got it, so it's really good. Okay, and for those people who are not able to install the prerequisites or they are just watching it live, so don't get disappointed. As I mentioned in the beginning of the session, you have the WhatsApp group open, and whenever you got it ready and whenever if you want to do it on your own, please drop a message there. We are ready to help you out. Okay, so handing over to John for the conclusion.
Thank you, Shan. So now it is Q&A. So before going to Q&A, let me summarize. So thank you, Pradyumna team, especially Smita and Naushad for this platform with this wonderful crowd. Team, we are really grateful to you for your support and warm responses throughout the session, even though the topic was a bit on a high side this time. For any continuation session, please feel free to connect with Pradyumna. Meantime, you can find the recorded session in our channel, Obscura Zone. Again, those who might not done the entire project, no worries. Please raise all your doubts and queries in our WhatsApp group. Team Obscura will always there to support you. Now it's over to you. Can you please come up with all your questions and doubts? We are happy to respond to all your queries. Now we can go ahead and start the Q&A. Team, can you please come up with your questions or queries? We are happy to answer your questions. We are waiting for you. Team, do you have any questions? Please come up on the chat window. We would love to answer all your questions. Any questions?
Team, if anyone want any particular portions to be repeated also, I mean, any particular topic or anything, that can be also taken up.
Any specific terminology that we discussed that we need to discuss once again? Or any gray areas for you that we can also discuss?
Or should we unmute anyone? Is that will that work?
Yes, we can unmute. Or are we good? Are we good with the topics that we discussed, and are we good with the project that we have done today? So yes, okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, team. Thank you for your responses. Okay, so finally, a big thank you from Team Obscura Zone. Have a great day. Happy weekend. Stay safe. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.